Hi, Jeremy Crow here. In this video, I'm going to teach you a powerful method of manipulation. Now, this can be used for nefarious purposes if you're trying to manipulate somebody, but you could also consider it an advanced communication technique. So what it'll do is it'll actually open up the other person to listening to what you have to say and not just outright rejecting it, to actually consider what you have to say. So this can be used in a lot of different situations. It can even be used to help calm somebody down or bring somebody out of a negative state. So the raw details on how to do this. But before we get into it, I do videos like this all the time. So I would suggest subscribing to my channel if you like this type of thing. I put videos out on lucid dreaming, other esoteric subjects, manipulation, neuro linguistic programming, things like that. So, neuro linguistic programming, or NLP, is where the terms come from for how I'm going to describe this technique. So first off, you'll want to achieve a state of rapport with the other person. So this is a state where you are connected. You feel like the connection with the other person. And the way that you can do this, one really powerful way you can do this is what's called pacing the other person. Sometimes it can be referred to as mirroring, although I prefer pacing. It's a slightly more accurate term. But essentially what you do is you mirror the other person, but not like a mirror. Like, you do it more subtly. So you take on elements of that individual's state, their current state. So if they are excited, then you work yourself up into an excited state. If they are chill, then you chill. And another thing you'll do is you will mirror their physical behaviors and their vocal patterns as well. So you don't want to do this really obviously. So if they scratch their nose, you don't scratch your nose. Maybe you might put your hand up and touch your face or in some other way. Or maybe if you have a drink, maybe you take a drink when they go up and scratch their nose or something, or vice versa. If they have a drink and you don't, they take a drink, maybe you go like this, for a second while they're drinking. And you can use some of the same words that they're using a lot in their speech. Although, like I said, you have to be subtle with this. Use a bit of finesse. Don't be blunt and obvious about it. You might need a bit of practice to get that finesse. So if it's too obvious, they might think you're mocking them, or they might just pick up on it and they'll be like, why are you doing that? Why are you trying to sound like me, or whatever, right? So like I said, you have to have a bit of finesse with that. So practice it in your daily life. With your friends, you don't really need to pace them to get into rapport, because generally with your friends, with romantic partners and such, you will usually get into rapport instantly. You already have that rapport with that person. But you can still practice the techniques and see if they notice that you're pacing them. So that would be a good non-risky way of practicing that technique. So now, what this does is it sets up in the other person's subconscious mind the idea that, hey, this person is like me. And they'll be more willing to actually listen to what you have to say. And that feeling of rapport is actually a pleasant experience. It feels good. So this is the next step. So what you do is, once you're in that state of rapport, once you've established that rapport with the other person, you change your state into the state that you desire the person to enter. So like I was mentioning earlier as an example, if somebody is all worked up and they're freaking out, get yourself worked up too, and be like, oh my god, yeah, that thing, it's crazy, and then they'll be like, I know, isn't it? Jeez, and then once you get into that state of rapport, you don't have to be in it for too long, but be in it long enough to kind of solidify that rapport, and then start transitioning out. Be like, yeah, I know, it is crazy, like, geez, like why isn't that like, come on, why isn't that person being like this? And then you gradually kind of work your way out of that state into a more calm state. And then that person, they'll be like, yeah, I know. Oh, gee, and they'll start like following you. That's what it's called, pacing or lead, and then rapport. Pacing leads to rapport, and then you lead and they follow, because what they want to do is they want to maintain that sense of rapport. Even on a subconscious level, it's a pleasurable state to be in, and so they will naturally follow you into another state in order to maintain that feeling of rapport. And that's how it's done. So one thing I mentioned, you can observe this state of rapport in others, like say in public or among other friends, where you'll notice that, like say a couple is at a restaurant. A lot of the times they pick up their drink to drink it at the same time. It's really interesting to notice when you become aware of this, a certain level of reality kind of peels away, and you're like, oh, I see what's going on here. The interaction, the mechanics of this interaction between these two people. It's really interesting to see, and you can practice it, and you can get better at it, and you can become a more effective communicator. And if you choose to use it for nefarious purposes, well, that's up to you, and you take on the consequences of your actions if you should take that route. But I'm not going to judge. If this is a technique that you can utilize it for whatever you'd like. One very popular way of utilizing this would be to use it for a job interview, to impress the interviewer and make them feel comfortable with you and be more likely to recommend you for the job to their, if they're not the hiring manager, if there's somebody from HR or whatever, or even if they are the hiring manager. So that's it. That's what I wanted to tell you guys. Until next time, stay lucid.